All right. Good morning, class. So today is another session for mathematics class, quadratic equation. All right. So today we'll be working on quadratic equations for post UTME and foundation classes. All right. So when we are talking about quadratic equations, like I said, this class will mainly based on all calculations. So we started this class last week, so I already made a brief introduction on what quadratic equations is. So what I'm going to do this in this class is I'm going to give you the general form of quadratic equation, which I've written on the board here, as you can see. So another thing we're going to do is we're going to work with examples. I'm going to show you how you can use different methods of solving quadratic equation. So there are before mentioning the methods of before listing out the methods of solving quadratic equations, let me just explain what this general form of quadratic equation is. So now, here in this general form of quadratic equation, we have ax squared plus bx plus c equals to 0. So now this a is always called the coefficient of x squared. That's the number in front of this x squared. You can see it's something like that. So it's called the coefficient of x squared. The b is the coefficient of x, while the c is the constant. So now what I wrote here is, okay, actually before I move to this part, let me now explain the methods of solving quadratic equations. We have four methods of solving quadratic equations, which is factorization. We have factorization. So I'm just gonna, okay, let me just list it somewhere where it's going to be clear. So let's say factorization, right? We have completing the square. We have formula method, and we have graphical method. So in this class, what we are going to be doing simply is the factorization and the formula method. Okay, so because we are um, in your foundation exams and post UTME exams, what you'll be dealing with is objective. So you using completing the square is going to take you a long time. So what I'm going to teach you is factorization of formula method and formula method. So this graphical, definitely you have to use a graph, which for now in this scope of our class we don't need it yet. So graphical method, formula method, completing the square, and factorization. These are the four methods of solving quadratic equations. So now start with the first one, factorization. So now just like the name, it comes factors when you see it's factorization. So now what we are dealing with is most times you're dealing with factors. Now when we say factor of a number, what do we mean factor of a number? When we are talking about, okay, if we say the factor of 6, I'm asking you, what is the factor of 6? What do I mean by that? I simply mean numbers that when I multiply them together, I'm going to get 6. So that when I multiply these two numbers, I'm going to get 6. So what are those numbers? I have 6 times 1. This is a factor. 3 times 2 is a factor. 2 times 3 is a factor. 1 times 6. These are factors of 6. 6, 1, 3, 2. Those are factors of 6 because when I multiply them, I can get 6. You understand? So these are factors of 6. So now, when we are working with factorization, there's something called product and there's something called sum. I hope I'm not too fast. There's something called product and there's a sum. Now, in the product, so as I was saying, the product and sum. So in the chat section, I'm seeing more I chat. You can unmute yourself and ask a question. You said you don't understand something. You can just speak up and you can unmute yourself and ask your question directly. The parts you don't understand. Can you unmute yourself?
I don't understand that place. That's 6 plus 6x something. The place you wrote 6. I don't get it.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I was talking about factors. Understand? So I was talking about factors of a number. So what I was saying is this is not x actually, it is multiplication sign, like times. So when I was saying factors, I said the factors of a number are not. All right, so factors of a number. I said two numbers that you multiply, you can use to get a number. So in this example here, I'm using 6. So now what I did here is, what are the factors of 6? That is, what are those two numbers you can multiply to get 6? First thing is 6 times 1, right? Another one is 3 times 2, which should give us 6. Another one is 2 times 3, which give me 6. Another one is 1 times 6, which give me 6. So what I'm just doing here is I'm just showing you factors of a number, which we are going to be using when we move ahead in factorization. I hope that's clear. Did I answer your question? Aishat, did I answer your
Yes,
question?
sir. Yes.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, like I was saying, I said in factorization, we're going to be working with products and sum. Now, what is the product? Product is simply the multiplication of the coefficient of x squared and the constants. So now, from the general form of quadratic equation we are seeing here, the product is a times c. Why? Because the coefficient of x squared, which is, like I said, the number in front of x squared is a, and then the constant c is this. So I say a times c. Product is multiplication. When we talk about product, we mean multiplication. So I say a times c is equal to ac, right? So this is my product in this general form of quadratic equation. While in sum is simply the coefficient of x. Now I said in factorization, we take note of two things: the product and the sum. The product is simply the multiplication of the coefficient of x squared and the constant, which is c, a times c. So we're going to be taking real examples, and you're going to see how these guys work. Why the sum is b. So now what we want to do in quadratic equation is we want to take the factors of AC. Now this is where factors come in place. The factors are explained here. We want to get that factors of AC. That's definitely, if they are factors of AC, if I multiply them, I should get AC. But then we want to get that particular factor. Now when we add them up, we should get B. So that is the meaning of sum. When you're talking about sum, you mean addition. Difference is subtraction. Product is multiplication. Understand? So when I get the factors of AC, those two factors of AC, when I multiply them, I get AC. And then when I divide them, I get B. So those are what we call factors. The factors that when we multiply them, we get the product. When we add them, we get the sum. So that's what we're doing. So when we get that, we're going to replace those numbers with B. So that way, let's take an example. For example, I have x squared plus, say, 3x minus 4 is equal to 0. Let's say this is a quadratic equation, right? So what I want to do here is, if I'm to factorize this, the first thing I have to find is I have to find my product and I have to find my sum. So I can write this down: product and sum. So this is just going to be a quick example to explain what I'm to illustrate what I'm explaining here rather. So this is product. So now the coefficient of x squared rather, the coefficient of x squared here is 1, right? So because like you guys will say there's an invisible one, most people will say there's an invisible one in front of x squared. So there's an invisible one here in front of x squared. So the coefficient here is 1. So my product, or I can say the first thing I'll do is to write down the my factors. That's um my variables, which is a, b, and c. What do I mean? What I want to do is simply a is equal to 1 from this equation by comparing the general form of quadratic equation with this my example here. I can say a is equal to 1. B, which is the coefficient of x here, is equal to 3 here because 3 is the coefficient of x. So I can say b is equal to 3. And like I say, c is equal to minus 4. Now I can't say c is equal to 4 because of this sign here. So if this sign here is plus, I can say c is equal to plus 4. But because the sign here is minus 4, I'll say c is equal to minus 4. Likewise, if the sign here is minus 3x, I'm going to say my b is minus 3. I hope that's clear. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm writing out the variables in this particular equation. My a is 1, which is this, the coefficient of x squared. My b, which is the coefficient of x, is equal to 3. While my constant c is equal to minus 4. So now what we want to do here is product. From what I wrote here, my product is the multiplication of a and c, which is a times c. And here, in this case, my a is 1 and my c is minus 4. I hope that's clear. So I'll just write this. I'll write this up here. So, right. So my product is 1 times minus 4. Why my sum is 3? Because my b is 3. So my sum is 3. Now, here we go. So if I'm multiplying this, 1 times minus 4 is going to give me minus 4. Right? 1 times minus 4 is going to give me minus 4. Now, what I want to do is, I want to find factors of this product, in this case, which is minus 4, that when I add them up, I will get 3. That's just what it's all about. Factors of 4, that when I multiply them, I'll get 3. But because I'm just using a rough example here, this question is actually not correct. So I just used a rough example. If I want to make this question correct, I can replace this with 4. Like I'm making this 4 x minus 4x, and I can say this is plus 3. Now, if I want to work with it this way, let's say, okay, let's take it as a real question now. Let's work with this as a real question. So I have this as minus 4x plus 3 is equal to this. So I can say my b here will change to minus 4, while my c will change to 3. So I just use that first one as an illustration. So now let's work with a real example here. My b is now minus 4 and my c is 3. So now my product will become 1 times 3, which is 3. And then my sum will become minus 4, right? So my sum is minus 4 and my product is 3. So what I want to do here is finding factors of 3 that when I multiply them, I'll get 3, which that's what factors is. And when I add them, I'll get minus 4. So now what are the factors of 3? The first one is 1 times 3. 3 times 1, anyhow you say it's 1 times 3, 3 times 1 is the same thing. Then also, if I multiply minus 1 times minus 3, I should get 1, right? I should get 3 minus 1 times minus 3. Why do I say that? Because minus 1 times minus 3 will give me plus 3. Why? Because minus times minus is equal to plus. And then 1 times 3 is 3. Right? So which means minus 1 times minus 3 will also give me 3. Now, when we are talking about factors of a number, it can be positive or negative integers. Integers, I mean whole numbers. So it can be positive or negative whole numbers. So the factors of this product we are looking for here can either be positive or negative. So now in this case here, I have minus 1 times minus 3. So these are all the factors of 3. Now, let's see which of them, when we sum them up, will give me minus 4. So if I say 1 plus 3 will give me 4, 3 plus 1 is going to give me 4. But then minus 1 plus minus 3 is going to give me minus 4. Why? Because this is the same as minus 1 minus 3, which is minus 4. So which means the most suitable factors for me to use here is minus 1 and minus 3. Why? Because when I sum them up, I get minus 4. I think you guys are following me. So what we are going to do here is we are going to replace these two factors with minus 4x in this particular equation. Now, here is how we are going to do it. So let me just have somewhere here. So now I say minus 4x is equal to minus x minus 3x. That's what it means. Because here, if I add them up together, I have this. So my two factors is minus x and minus 3x. Why did I bring it? Because here I have 4x minus 4x. So what I have to do is I'm bringing the variable, which is x, into these factors. So 1 times x, or rather minus 1 times x is minus x, and then minus 3 times x is minus 3x. That's how I did it. So I said minus 4x is equal to minus x minus 3x. So instead of writing minus x in this particular equation here, I'm going to replace it with minus x minus 3x. So I'll say x squared minus x minus 3x is equal, sorry, plus 3 is equal to 0. I think you guys are following me. So here we're going to collect like terms. So we're just going to factorize in brackets. We take the two first brackets. We say x squared minus ax, then minus. Now, when we come to this point, I hope you guys are just following me. So we're going to take it steadily. So when you come to this point, when you are trying to open these brackets, the first thing you have to think of is, okay, you're trying to find factors of this. Okay, let's just say 3x plus 3. Let's just take it like this, equals 0. Now, if I leave it like this and I open these brackets, I'm using minus to multiply these brackets. I'll have minus times 3x minus 3x. Then minus times 3 will give me minus 3, which is not the same as this. Okay, let me explain. So if I'm doing this, I have minus x squared. If I want to open this bracket back, it means I'm using this minus, which is the same as minus 1, to multiply what is in here. So I can have minus times this, or minus 1 times 3x, minus 3x, then minus 1 times 3, give me minus 3, which is not the same as this. So now one thing we always do is, anytime we are trying to factor a number with a negative in front of it, we change the signs coming after it. So now, for example, in this case here, I have a minus sign, negative sign. I'm going to change this to negative because this is positive that was here. So it's negative that was here, I change it to positive. It's the plus sign, I change it to minus. It's a minus sign, I change it to plus. Why? Because of this minus sign in front of it. So now if I'm opening these brackets, I can easily say minus 1 times 3x give me minus 3x, and minus 1 times minus 3 give me plus 3, which is the same as this. Right, so I'll just continue from here. I'll look for factors. What is factors means what is common? What is common in these two is x. So I can say x and x minus 1 minus what is common here is 3. Because 3 can go in 3x and 3 can go in 3. So 3 in 3x is x, and 3 in 3 is 1. So I can say minus 1 equal to 0. So now from here, I can see that these two the two numbers or the two equations in this bracket or two expressions in this bracket are the same, x minus 1 and x minus 1. Now, if you're solving the quadratic equation and these two brackets are not the same using factorization, when you're using factorization, and what is in these two brackets is not the same, it means you are on the wrong foot. Maybe you made a mistake somewhere or something. These two have to be equal. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to pick one of them, x minus 1, and then the next one, x minus 3 equals to 0. All right, so somebody's asking a question. Can I explain the factors again? All right, I like this class the way it's interactive. So you can just unmute yourself. If you ask the question, just unmute yourself and then just ask your question.
I don't understand the factors before you
Sorry, can you speak up?
when you were finding the factors for the product and the sum. Can you please go back to that
All
part?
right, so I said product. You know the meaning of factors, right? You understand what I mean by factors? That's two numbers that
Yes,
multiply
yes,
themselves to give that number. You
yes,
understand that, right? All right, so
yes.
like I said, I already wrote down the factors of 3 in this case, which is our example, as
Mm,
1 times 3, right?
mm,
3 times 1, and then minus 1 times minus 3. So now
mm.
what I want to do here is I want to get the numbers that when I multiply them, I'm going to get my sum, which is minus 4. Sorry, rather, when I multiply them, I'll get 3, and when I add them, I'll get minus 4. So from all these factors I have there, all right, so I'm just replacing this multiplication sign that is in between these factors with an additional sign to see if I'll get minus 4. So now here I have 1 times 3. Instead of writing 1 times 3, I wrote 1 plus 3. But 1 plus 3 gave me 4, not minus 4. So which means this is not the factors we are looking for. So this is out of it.
Okay.
So next one is 3 plus 1, which is 3 times 1, and I replaced the times with plus. I also have 4, which means this is out of it. Now the next one is
Mm.
minus 1 times minus 3. So now if I replace the multiplication sign with plus here, I have minus 1 plus minus
Minus
3,
1 minus.
which gave me minus 4, which means this is the factors we are looking for. So now, which means I've
Okay.
gotten my two factors as minus 1 and minus 3. Those are my two factors. Don't forget, the first factor is
Okay.
minus 1, the other factor is minus 3. I have these two factors. Now, for me to do move, I said I have to bring these factors into this equation. How do I do that? I simply multiply each of the factor by x. I multiply minus 1 times x, I get minus x. And I also multiply
Mm.
minus 3 times x, I have minus 3x.
Minus
Are you with me?
3x.
I can say minus x minus 3x is equal to minus 4x. And if you calculate this, you see this is correct mathematically.
Yes.
Minus 4x is equal to minus x minus 3x. How do I get this x? I simply multiplied my factors by x. Minus 1 times x gave me minus x. And minus 3 times x gave me minus 3x. Right. So what I'm
Mm.
doing here is after getting this, I'm simply replacing this with the 4x in this equation. I'm replacing these two guys,
Mm.
minus x minus 3x, with 4x in this equation. Isn't it?
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
what I'm doing here.
Yes.
So I'm replacing this. And from here I continue. I think you understand from this point.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
You say?
I do. Thank you. I understand.
All right. So I think I answered your question. That's clear. It's clearer now, right?
Yes, it is.
All right. So we'll just continue from there. So like I was saying, I said the expressions in these brackets, when you're solving factorization or when you're using factorization method to solve quadratic equation, it has to be the same. X minus 1 is here, and x minus 1 also has to be here. Like in this example, we have x minus 1. So definitely you won't be having x minus 1 in all your questions. But in this case, we have x minus 1 here, and we have x minus 1 here, which means we're on the right notes. We're getting it correctly. So what I said is, you pick one of these, in this one of the expressions, x minus 1, and then you take this x and then the sign in front of this next one, x minus 3. I have this equals to 0. So what I can do here is, from here, I can say since x minus 1, open bracket, x minus 3 is equal to 0, I can say x minus 1 equals to 0, or x minus 3 is equal to 0. Now, this is it. X minus 1 is equal to 0, or x minus 3 equals to 0. I'm just separating it. So now I have x is equal to 0 plus 1. That's, I'm collecting like things and bringing the numbers to one side, and I'm leaving the variables to one side. So because I'm changing sides, the signs are going to change. So this is x is equal to 0 plus 3. Don't forget, this is minus when it's coming here to change to positive. So I have x is equal to 1, or x is equal to 3. So now we have this. Here is the answers to this particular equation, x squared minus 4x plus 3 is equal to 0, which means x can either be 1 or x is equal to 3 for this particular expression to be equal to 0. Now, this x squared minus 4x plus 3, if it is like that, it's just an expression. But now, because I'm adding this equal to 0, that's what makes it an equation. So this particular expression, x squared minus 4x plus 3, will only be equal to 0 if the values of x is 1 and the value of x is 3. That's the meaning of all of what we are doing here. So the two values of x that can make this particular equation mathematically correct is 1 and 3. I hope that is correct. So now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a very quick method, actually, a very short method of solving this without even having to pen this down. That's immediately after getting your factors. Once you have your two factors, then you can just pick your answer. Now, how am I going to explain that? Since I've already shown you how to do this, we have our answers. X is equal to 1 and x is equal to 3. So what we are going to do here is, in this short method, it's going to take you like 30 seconds. After you've gotten your two factors, it's just going to take you 30 seconds. It's very useful when you're working objectives. So now I have my factors as -1 and -3. So what I'm going to do here is, since I have the first factor as -1 and the second factor as -3, what I'm going to do is, these two factors, I'm going to change their signs. What do I mean? I'm going to change their signs. No, now this first factor is -1, right? When I'm changing the sign, it's going to become +1. When I change the sign of the second factor, it is -3, right? So if I'm changing the sign, it's going to become +3. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to divide what I have by the factor, by the coefficient, rather, by the coefficient of x squared. Now, in this, our question here, the coefficient of x squared is 1. So if I divide 1 by 1, I'm going to have 1. And if I divide 3 by 1, I'm going to have 3. Now you can see it, I have 1 and 3. Very simple, right? So the first thing is get your factors, your two factors. Change the signs, -1 and -3. Just change the signs. So when I'm changing the sign, it's changing from +1, from -1 to +1, and from -3 to +3. And I divide it by the coefficient of x squared. Now, in this case here, the coefficient of x squared is 1. And I do this. So this is just a simpler method of solving this objective. But then when you're in theory questions, you can just go ahead and do this. And then you get your answer. X is equal to 1 or x equal to 3. But then in the objective answer where you're trying to beat time, you can quickly do this. After getting your products, you change the signs of the factors. Sorry, after getting your factors, you change the signs of the factors, then divide them by the coefficient of x squared. I think that is clear. So we are going to take examples now. We are going to take real examples from the past questions. So, right. So the first example says, solve the equation 5x squared minus 4x minus 1 equals 0. Solve the equation 5x squared minus 4x minus 1 equals 0. So the first thing I would love to do here is, I would love to write down my variables, which is a, b, and c. So let me write the general form of quadratic equation below it. Ax squared plus bx plus c. Always have this at the back of your mind. Ax squared plus bx plus c. The general form of quadratic equations, right? So here, what I'm going to do here is I'm simply going to state down the variables, the numbers for these variables, a, b, and c. So my a here is the coefficient of x squared, which is 5. Then my b is -4, like I said in the first example, the coefficient of x, -4. Why my c is -1? This constant here is -1. Right, so I have my a equals to 5, b is equals to -4, and c is equal to -1. So what I have to do now is products and sum. So my sum is simply the value of b. So my sum is going to be -4. Why my product is going to be a times c, which my a is 5 and my c is -1. So I have my product as -5. So what I want to do here is I'm going to find the factors of -5 such that when I sum them up, I'm going to have -4. So now let's go over it. -5. Now, what are the factors of -5? Now, one thing you have to know is this is asking for factors of -5, not factors of 5. So if you say 1 times 5, it is wrong because 1 times 5 is not going to give you -5. I hope you're following. If I say 1 times 5, I'm not going to get 5. I'm not going to get -5. I'm going to get 5, which means this is not a factor of -5. So what are factors of -5? 1 is -1 times 5. I multiply minus 1 times 5, I'm going to get minus 5. Also, if I multiply minus 5 times 1, I'm going to get minus 5. So anyhow you arrange it, they are factors of minus 5, right? So I have minus 1 times 5, give me minus 5. And then minus 5 times 1, give me minus 5. So I can just pick any one of them since they are the same numbers. So I can say, now let's say if we add um, an addition sign to the front of these guys, they're going to give me minus 4. Now I'm picking the first one, minus 1 times minus 5. Minus 1, don't forget, I will try to change this multiplication sign to addition sign. So I'm changing these times to plus, so I have plus 5. So minus 1 plus 5 is what? If I sum up minus 1 and 5, what is it going to give me? It's going to give me 4, because I have minus 1 plus 5, it's got 4. Now, this is very wrong because my sum is minus 4, so which means this is out of the equation. This is not the particular factor we are looking for. These are not my two factors. My two factors, when I sum them up, they have to give me minus 4. But then this one is giving me 4, which means these two factors are wrong. So now let me move to the next one, minus 5. I'm going to exchange the positive sign with and the multiplication sign with the addition sign. So this will be this, minus 5 plus 1. Now, minus 5 plus 1 give me minus 4. You can check it on your calculator. Minus 5 plus 1 is equal to minus 4. So now, which means these two guys, they are my factors in this particular equation. So now, let's first go through okay, let me just use the normal method so that you can know our answers here. So now, like I said, using the past method, I have my two factors is minus 5 and 1, isn't it? So the first factor is minus 5 and the second factor is 1. The first thing I said you should do is you change the signs, which means the minus 5 is going to change to plus 5, change signs, minus 5 is changing to plus 5, and then the plus 1 is changing to minus 1, right? So now I've changed the signs. Now the next thing is to divide the two of them by the coefficient of x squared. So what's the coefficient of x squared? The coefficient of x squared is 5. So I'm going to say plus 5 divided by 5, and then minus 1 divided by 5. So this is just a rough work, just a rough check. So plus 5 divided by 5 is going to give me 1, and then minus 1 divided by 5 is minus 1 over 5. So I have this as my two factors. X is equal to two answers, right? X is equal to 1 or x is equal to minus 5. So let's write it somewhere here. X is equal to 1 or x is equal to minus 1 over 5. So we have this. So now let's solve it using the normal method of factorization and see if we get this back. So from here, I already have my two factors as minus 5 and plus 1. So like I said you multiply both factors by x. So the first factor is minus 5. Minus 5 times x is going to give me x. Then plus 1 times x is going to give me x. Plus 1 times x, x. So when I add this together, I'm going to get minus 4x. Minus 5x plus x is equal to minus 4x. So since this is equal to this, I can simply replace this minus 4x in this my equation here with minus 5x plus x. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I'll say minus 5x. Instead of writing minus 4x in here, I'll just write minus 5x plus x. So I have 5x squared, then minus 5x plus x, minus 1 is equal to 0. So what I did is I replaced this minus 4x with minus 5 plus minus 5x plus x. So from here, I can move ahead. So what I'm going to do here is, the first thing is I'm going to collect like terms by bringing the brackets. The first two expressions in brackets, the next two expressions in brackets. So I'm going to say 5x squared minus 5x in brackets, then plus. Now, in this case, we're not going to change the sign of this next expression in brackets. Why? Because we have a positive sign. If you have a negative sign here, you have to change the sign between these expressions. But if you have a positive sign, just leave it the way it is, right? So you just have it at the back of your mind that you're only changing the signs when it's negative. When this sign here is negative. So if it's positive here, change it to negative. If it's negative, change to positive. So I have equal to 0. What I have to do here is find the factors or what is common between this expression. In this expression, what is common? 5x is common. Why? Because 5x can divide 5x squared, and 5x can also divide 5x. So if I say 5x is common, I can say 5x and 5x squared is x, and then 5x and 5x is 1. So I have close. So what is common here? What is common in x minus 1? 1 is common. So I have 1 open bracket, x minus 1 equals 0. Now from this, I can see that I have x minus 1 here and x minus 1 here. So these two, what is in these two brackets? They are equal. which means I'm on the right track. So I can just simply take one of them, x minus 1, and then 5x plus 1 equal to 0. So what am I going to do next? I can say x minus 1 equal to 0, or 5x plus 1 is equal to 0. So here I will just call it like x is equal to 0 plus 1, or 5x is equal to 0 minus 1. So I say x is equal to 1, or 5x is equal to minus 5. Minus 1. So for me to get the value of x here, what am I going to do? I'm going to divide through by 5. I'm going to have x is equal to minus 1 over 5, and then x is equal to 1. So I have x is equal to 1, or x is equal to minus 1 over 5. You can see. So it took me how many seconds? Maybe say 30 seconds to get this. And then when I was working, so this is just a simple trick when you're working with objective. After you get your factors, you can quickly do this and you have the answer. Right, so we're just going to take one more example, and then we'll take questions. Or we have just a few minutes in class. If you have questions, we have a few minutes in class. If you have any questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask them. Just unmute yourself and ask them real quick. Because I don't think we take a question now. We might be able to complete it. So if you have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask them.
Sir, excuse me, sir.
All right.